Hey, welcome everybody. Thanks so much for joining us today, and we are so excited to have you today and are also just so excited to have you participating in Civic Health Month and using your Healthy Democracy kits. Today, we wanted to spend some time helping you use your Healthy Democracy kit even more effectively and give you a chance to learn from the best. We have Vot-ER's founder and executive director, Alister Martin, who is, in addition to having those roles, one of the most enthusiastic and creative Healthy Democracy Kit users out there. And he's going to take us through some tips and tricks from his end on what he has found to be most effective and how he gets the most impact out of the kits. And we will be sure to save plenty of time at the end for your questions as well. If you have questions, you can use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen to submit them. And we'll make sure to save some time for those questions at the end of the conversation. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Alister.
Thank you so much, Ben. Quick tech check. Ben, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, y'all. First of all, happy Civic Health Month, August 3rd. We are so happy to be able to share this space, share this time with you, to give you an overview of ways to make even more impact with the Healthy Democracy kits that you guys have, so that you can not only get your patients registered to vote, but your friends, your family, colleagues, in very easy ways. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and give you a quick overview. This shouldn't take the full 45 minutes, so please, if you have questions, go ahead and ask them. All right, Ben, what screen do I have there? Is that the PowerPoint?
Yes, you have using your unique Healthy Democracy kit.
Fantastic. All right, well, let's get started. So first of all, important context to set is that you are part of an incredible community. There are 15,000 physicians, nurses, medical students, and social workers, all with Healthy Democracy kits, who've either received them already or soon will. We've been inundated with orders, as you might imagine, over the course of the last several weeks. There are over 100 plus hospitals that are using some aspect of Vot-ER to help their patients while they're waiting. As you know, you are part of National Civic Health Month, which is the first ever month devoted to healthcare-based voter registration. And already we've helped thousands of patients, family members, colleagues get registered to vote, but then also to get their mail-in ballots, which has been incredibly important, particularly now. COVID-19 has made voting a public health issue, and who best to talk about public health issues in our country and facing the citizens of our country than healthcare providers. The most inspiring thing that we have seen, though, I think, for our team really has been your response, not only to issues within healthcare, not only to what we have seen as, quite frankly, the failure of public health infrastructures that we've had in this country, failures of our healthcare system in general over the course of the last several months. And by the way, not to point fingers, our healthcare system has been broken before this administration and then before the one before that. And so not only have healthcare providers helped to step up and address problems with our healthcare system, but we saw an incredibly high number of orders in the wake of George Floyd's murder, with the national conversation shifting to how can we best address our failures on the criminal justice system front, or policing system front. Healthcare providers have really stepped up, and we've seen this exponential and sustained growth in interest in our kits, which has been really fascinating. And the way that we interpret that as a team is these are healthcare providers stepping up to say, not only will we heal our patients, but we'll also step up and heal our nation, which has been really inspiring. So let's talk anatomy. The anatomy of the kit is very simple. There are two pieces, the anatomical structure of this. First, on the inferior aspect of your kit, I'm going to stop. That's it. That's the end of the anatomy jokes. We have the text short code trigger, which basically is this. Look, you got two words, vote and then a blank. Whatever comes after the word vote is your kit's specific URL. And so in this case, vote health is the specific URL. So if you all have your badges handy, or if you can mentally imagine your badge, whatever that second word is that comes after vote, that is your specific URL. The second piece of the kit is the QR code. Similarly, the QR code is specific to your URL. So everything revolves around your unique URL. And if you know how to use a URL, ways to hyperlink it, ways to share it on social media, you know everything you need to know about the 10 ways that I'm going to show you to use your kit in a very effective way. First, let's just discuss what state tagging means. So every single Healthy Democracy kit that's out there right now, we have a state tag on it, which means that if you're in California and you're listening to this webinar and you help someone get registered to vote in California, and the person tries to register in that state, we will be able to track that as a point. Obviously, we don't keep any personal information, so we can't tell you individually who these folks are that are registering, but we will know at a high level if folks have gotten registered or started the process of registering and also started the process of getting their mail-in ballot. Some folks on this call might have a unique hospital, school, or residency program kit. And remember, all this applies to you as well. Instead of the word health, yours will be something else. It might be Hopkins, or it might be Harvard, depending on what school you're part of. So how do you figure out what your unique URL is for your badge? Well, use it. My badge is somewhere around here. Probably my cat has it, but if I ever find it, I will show you. But basically, the URL will be revealed to you if you use your QR code or if you use the text code. And so if you want to, right now, this is a dynamic PowerPoint, and I want to take some time now to give you the opportunity to figure it out for yourself. So take some time and go ahead and use your badge either by scanning the QR code with your phone or by sending the text message, and reveal your badge to yourself, your URL to yourself. All right, great. Hopefully you found your URL, and that leads us directly into what is one of the most exciting things that we've got going on at Vot-ER right now, which is what we just announced, which is our STATES program. STATES is a national healthcare provider-based competition aimed at helping friends, colleagues, and patients vote. Now, what we have here is a little competition. And so healthcare providers all across the country will get to compete for bragging rights to see which states' healthcare providers mean it the most when they say that they want to help the most vulnerable and empower their patients, their family, their friends to vote come November. And so what we're able to do here is do live point tracking, which means that every time you get someone either registered or they start the process of registering or help them get their mail-in ballots, your state gets a point. The competition runs from about mid-July all the way through October 9th. Question time. Continue the interactivity. Which state do you think is in first place right now? Go ahead and take a second. Unfortunately, not my home state of New Jersey, but it is North Carolina. Really effective effort by the physicians, med students, and social workers of North Carolina to come out hot and in front. And if you want to continue seeing where your state lines up on the scoreboard, go ahead and type in that URL or use that QR code, and you can get started and you can see where your school or your state is at. All right, So here's the overview of what the next 20 or so minutes are going to be like. We're going to talk about some digital usage ideas and some physical usage ideas, all of which are building on what we've just discussed in terms of the URL, the text code, and the QR code process. For digital usage ideas, we'll talk about putting a link in your email signature, which is the second most effective thing that we do here at Vot-ER to help people get registered. Maybe surprising to some folks, but unsurprising to others, given how much our society has moved to a digital world. Second, we'll talk about changing your Instagram link for folks who have Instagram, creating Twitter storms. I always say that as if I know what a Twitter storm is. I still don't, but they've been used effectively in some of our states, and I'll try to do my best explaining that. And then lastly, holding text drives or text campaigns. In terms of our physical usage ideas, we're going to talk about creating signs, creating flyers, mass distributing your kits that you already have in your hand, and then creating stickers if we have time. One important thing to just call out: healthcare providers are busy. We don't have time to Photoshop or go on to InDesign. You might have time for Microsoft Paint if you're like me, but that's neither here nor there. If you want to, you can get started right now by going to your Google Drive link that you have right now in the chat. And what you'll see in there is ready-made content, pre-made posters, templates, things like that, that you can use immediately to get started as soon as this is over. All right, so let's do a quick tour of some of these digital ways. Every time you see a pink screen here, we're talking digital. If you see a gray screen or a gray bar at the top, we're talking physical. All right, so for folks who have Instagram, you guys know that you can have a bio in your, you can have a link in your bio. And the suggestion is just go ahead and take the specific URL that you have and put it in your Instagram link, in your Instagram bio, so that anytime you make a post about registering to vote, it's not just the optical, hey guys, get ready to get registered to vote. It's actually operational. You make it easy for people to, once you talk about voter registration in a post or something like that, you can immediately shift folks over to getting registered using the link. Next, as I mentioned, this is the second most effective thing that we do. We've got hundreds and hundreds of providers who have already changed their email signature to this simple email sig, which is, I want to make sure that you have a healthy and safe voting experience. Click here to register to vote and request a mail-in ballot from home. That is in your folder. You'll need to recreate that. You can obviously add your own garnish to it, but the most important thing is to add your specific link to that click here hyperlink. Again, don't know what a Twitter storm is, but here's my best shot. Basically, everyone in your department or your friend group all decides to post the same Twitter message at around the same time, and each time it's posted, you tag somewhere between 5 and 10 folks who are in your local community, who you would hope would then retweet and retweet and retweet and continue to chain moving forward. And so the idea there is to make sure that your specific link is in there so that your state can get the credit for these voter registrations. This one's pretty self-explanatory. If you're already on Instagram, you make posts on Instagram, why not just throw in that specific URL? This is an example of one of our most effective partners over at IORA. And they use posts like this on Facebook, actually, to get people registered to vote. This is just an example of how crafty and ingenious millennials are. We just ran a competition in North Carolina between Duke and UNC, and some of the University of North Carolina medical students created this. I don't think this has been done before. Basically, what they did was they were in a volunteer event, socially distanced volunteer event, and they created flyers like this, voter registration flyers, and they airdropped them to people at the volunteer event. And so, as you guys know, for folks who do have used airdropping before, you don't actually need permission to airdrop things. And so that's been a very interesting way to help people get registered to vote without touching anything or exchanging any pens or paper. Lastly, and this is probably the single most effective thing that you can do, you can plan a text bank. And so this is a very, very straightforward thing. It does take time. Basically, you form a friend group of individuals, either at your department or your division or your hospital. We've had some of the medical students already do this and get started with this. And you basically create a Google Sheet that has what we call text targets. So, pick a number of people who you think could benefit from hearing a voter registration message in your friend group. Either people who you see regularly, or folks that you work with on the wards, nurses or other colleagues that you've worked with in the past. And basically, every team member owns one tab on this document. Every team member is going to then supply those 10 names that they're going to start off by texting. And to win in this competition, the team member who is able to get 10 replies, can be affirmative or negative, 10 replies, saying that, thank you, I got your message, or awesome, I'm going to check the link out, wins. So to make this easy, it's best to have, when you have your 10 friends on that tab, have another tab that has the dedicated script that you might send out, meaning the text message that you will use to reach out to your colleagues and friends. But make it fun. Look, play music. You can make it happy hour. The sangrias are encouraged. The whole thing is over when you have the entire team get their 10 replies back. So everyone has to get 10 replies, and then you're done. You keep texting until you get 10 replies, though. So you might end up texting 20 or 30 people, all of which really needs to have that URL that you've learned about. And then lastly, all messaging options are on the table. It's not just text. So Instagram, DM, Facebook, like many folks are on, TikTok, if Microsoft buys it. And, that's the last I'll say about that. Now, physical usages. So you have a kit in your hand, hopefully. If you don't, let us know. And if you do have a kit, photocopy it, print it out, go laminate it. Once you've got a couple in your hand like this, this is actually a live shot of someone doing this at FedEx. You can then go out and hand them out. If you can hand a couple out, you can mass produce them and hand a lot of them out. So you can print hundreds of these, laminate them, punch holes out for the ID connectors to connect to, and leave them in places that are high traffic, student mailboxes or lockers, resident break rooms, faculty departmental mailboxes. Although for me, I have to be honest, I don't know when the last time I saw my departmental mailbox is, but you'll know better than me whether or not that's viable in terms of an option. This one's pretty self-explanatory. You can print and post wall posters. Again, in your states folder, you have access already to templates. You don't have to make this. You can if you want for the artistically savvy, but we want to make it easy for you to engage. So this is already on there. You can add your logo to it. You can add the link that we talked about. You print it, you post it, and that's it. For folks who attend Black Lives Matter protests or rallies, you can make protest signs. Obviously, it's incredibly important to engage in nonviolent protest, and also it's incredibly important to vote. And so those two things don't have to be mutually exclusive. In fact, they are symbiotic. And so when you are there, why not bring a sign with you as this image was actually shot in Boston, and help people get registered to vote. This is probably one of the coolest things we saw. As I mentioned, we had a competition down in North Carolina, and the UNC medical students went to the local bar that most of the medical school students go to after class, and they asked for their unique voter registration link to be put on the daily specials board. And apparently that was quite effective and also quite ingenious. This is pretty self-explanatory. You can make yard signs. Similarly, you have a pre-made template for that in the folder. And then lastly, plugging into pre-existing public health opportunities. This is an image that was taken at a COVID screening event. And so when you're at, public health opportunities that many of us do, sometimes I go and do, blood pressure screening in the local community, or blood glucose and primary care screening. And while you're there, why not offer voter registration? It's all optional. Patients get to choose to do it on their own. And it could be another way to sort of extend the impact that you have. Lastly, and just to remind folks, state competitions where it's all about. So you can follow the latest, get live scores, and figure out which state is on top at that URL. And then you've got tons and tons of pre-made content, pre-made posters already there. So that's sort of an overview of some of the novel tactics that we're seeing being used to do voter registration. I want to say a couple words about scripts and conversation prompts. So we're going to, in a second, put in a URL that you can use to basically figure out which of the many different conversational prompts and conversational scripts work best for you in your practice. So here's how I tend to bring up the conversation when I'm with patients. So there are two different ways. One is when I'm reacting to the patient, commenting on my badge, or the second is when I'm proactively bringing it up with the patient. So often what will happen, like what happened a couple nights ago on an overnight, the patient asked me, "Hey doc, why does your badge say vote on it?" And I'll say, well, the reason why it says vote is if you want to, and if you're able to, you should, check to see if you're registered to vote. I think there's a lot of folks here who, COVID-19 has just made things much more difficult. And one of the things that people forget is voter registration. So if you're interested, I can help you get registered to vote or check your voter registration. Just send this text message to this number. So that's one example of sort of the reactive approach. The proactive approach comes in two forms. The first is when I'm taking my social history, I'll ask, do you smoke? Do you drink? Do you do illicit substances? Do you have sex with men, women, or both? Are you registered to vote in the next coming election? And sort of slip it into the sort of normal cadence of my social history. And then lastly, there are patients who are uniquely, I would say, in danger of actually voting in person. Remember, COVID-19 has made voting a public health issue. And sometimes I will bring it up with patients and say, look, just looking at your past medical history, a couple nights ago, I saw a patient who actually was post-transplant and was on Imuran and cyclosporin. And I said, there's really no way that I can suggest to you to go and vote in person. I think that would be a bad idea. So if you're interested, I can help you get your mail-in ballot. And I'd say that the look of surprise that the patient had that I could help them get registered to vote or help them get their mail-in ballot was pretty affirming. Feels like a new superpower to do in the hospital. So those are just some tips in terms of how to bring the conversation up and also how to respond to patients if and when they ask. We're going to drop the Vot-ER script page in there, and you can peruse that at your own choosing and figure out if there are other ways to bring up the conversation for yourself. And that's basically it. We're right at sort of 1:30ish. We're going to take 5 or 10 minutes of questions, and if there are none, happy competing and happy Civic Health Month. Going to kick it over back to Ben. Any other things that we should discuss, Ben, or any questions come up on the Q&A? I haven't been monitoring.
There's nothing that's come up on the Q&A yet, but maybe we can just give people a minute if they have questions to submit them on the Q&A. Otherwise, I think, Alister, you hit a lot of a lot of really great points here, and wanted to say that we're just really grateful for everyone that joined. And also, we're recording this webinar. So if you have colleagues that said, you know, I really wanted to make it, but I couldn't at this time, this will be on our website and they can access it shortly after today. And we're also doing one of these each week at this time throughout the whole month.
Awesome. All right. Well, you all know where to find us. And please, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us at our email on the Vot-ER site, or at any point during the Civic Health Month emails, you can just hit a reply back and we'll get back to you.
Alister, we have one question that just came up in the chat. I'll read it. I'll read it to you.
Okay.
Joe Walters asking, I've run into hangups in my department and have government relations evaluating if we can all have these in our department, and getting discharge instructions with registration information. Any ideas?
Yeah, I think just like in medicine, the treatment depends on the diagnosis. And so I think I would ask a couple more questions around what the hangups specifically are. Hangups, as we've identified previously, come in various forms. Some hangups are around, well, is this going to add to my time? And are we going to be burdening healthcare providers with a whole nother task? That hangup is addressed with the simple idea that this is not actually healthcare providers registering patients to vote. Remember, this is healthcare providers reminding patients to vote, to register to vote on their own. It all happens through their own phone. And so the idea is we're not trying to train physicians to do healthcare, to do voter registration. We're trying to help physicians, help patients start the process of voter registration. But to just add to that, we also have a text line that's 24/7 that a patient can basically get on the phone with. And if there are any questions that they have about the voter registration process, they can get started there and get their answers. You know, if the hang up is not about time spent and is more about, you know, how difficult this is going to be, the answer there is, well, actually, it's not all that difficult. You just got to put in an order either on the bulk order process and get digital kits sent to you within the next 72 hours. If you want physical kits, it'll be 2 weeks. If you want posters, it'll be about 72 hours as well. So it's not very difficult to do this work. If there are hangups that are around partisanship, I think, you know, the good news is that this is not something new. This has been happening for decades, healthcare-based voter registration. The concept feels new. I wish we could take credit for creating it. We can't. Folks like the American Hospital Association have put a great briefing together in terms of all the legal justifications for why this is legal to do voter registration in hospitals. You know, a bunch of flagship hospitals have been doing this for years. UCSF, Mass General, UPenn, they've all been helping patients vote for years now. So, you know, I would unpack a little bit more what the hangups are. And if you want to, please feel free to unpack that a little bit more. But also, I've hit sort of the top 3 that we get. If there are others, please go ahead and put the specific diagnosis to continue the metaphor in the chat. And if not, you can also look at the frequently asked questions page, which has a bunch of one-pagers and documents that you can use to help with your administration.
Great. Thanks everybody so much for joining.
All right, y'all. Thank you.